First, just a very special thank you to all who have supported me since the beginning of the journey of just shining a light on difficult things, on hard answers. Thank you so much for doing that. This is for you. 10 years ago when my daughter died in a car crash, I made myself a promise. I promised that I would do a couple of things very specifically. One is that I would, everything I did and talked about through what I've learned, I would honor my other 3 kids, and I really hope I've done that. Thanks in advance for joining us. I hope you enjoy this next conversation. I'm Matt Logan, the host of This Matters in Real Life. Oh hey, stay tuned at the end of this. I'll give you some more information.
So COVID-19 versus education, this matters in real life. I was sort of blown away by sadly by numbers that I had seen on the suicide rate and attempted suicide rates of school-age kids, as it was worded. It's up unbelievably high in the last 2 years, especially, of course. 2021 saw an increase again from 2020. They came out and had said, okay, COVID-19 pandemic, and all we're going to do is distance learning for a short time, and then we're going to get back in school. And this also goes into, and I don't know if you saw this, but this also has bled into college campuses as well. It's not just school-age kids, and you hear all these positive things that are coming out, and COVID-19 is helped students increased. They spend less time and they have increased their test scores, right? Spend less time on this. What? Wait a minute.
Let me think. When I was a teenager,
I'll look at. I have it here.
So I was a teenager,
hanging out on my right. I'm not giving Craig enough time, right?
No. Craig Ugland. How you doing?
My left. That's all you get, Craig.
That's all I got.
Mike Marti.
Dude, you're here every week. You get a lot of time.
Whatever. I haven't been here for 2 months.
Well, I know. It took a little bit longer, but
that's okay.
Hey, so it's they're talking about when they talk about how kids lose about 4 points over the summer and all the testing scores and all this kind of stuff. They figure that they would gain about 2.7 points in math if they did this distance learning and all these other things. They're trying to make this such a positive thing. Give us a start, Mike. What do you think?
Well, I don't think there's any question about it. It's pretty undeniable that kids need to be in school learning, because that's where learning happens. It's where you have interaction with people, and not just learning basic math, but learning social skills, learning how to interact with people, learning how to smile and how to, just deal with your fellow man. That's what growing up is all about.
And that smile, or not being able to see facial expressions, is going to have a huge effect on kids.
Yeah.
Not seeing facial expressions for 2 years in classrooms is going to have a huge effect on kids' interaction with other people and reading emotions. And I don't know how you measure the effect, but it's going to be an effect. I don't think it's going to be a positive effect.
I think they want to make sure that they can't measure the effect, honestly.
Absolutely.
I mean, they're not asking students. No. I haven't seen any surveys where they're going in and asking students.
Right.
Or the parents.
What do you think? Well, and then the parents get involved, and then we have the DOJ coming in and saying they're terrorists.
Yeah.
What I was going to say, cutting in on the intros, so I apologize, was I was a teenager, and I would imagine, and I was a good student, but if I was able to take a test via camera and have some notes in front of me while I took that test, I'd probably take advantage of those notes so I could do better on my test. I don't know if they've given any thought on that.
I probably would have actually gotten my discount on my auto insurance if I would have done things that way, because I wouldn't have missed out on the honor roll.
They still do that.
Oh yeah, they still do
they
that.
do.
Yeah.
All right. I remember that. Wow, that's crazy. We're the same age, by the way. I don't know if you know that.
Yeah.
I think we're all.
I mean, you look younger than I do.
I don't think so.
It's been so the thing for me is I've been in somewhere around 300 different schools since my daughter died in a car crash, and so I get I have exposure to a lot of students that are, they will send a message or make a post on social media after I've been at their school, and that they don't address some of the emotional issues that I address in my talk, and I address them in a position of strength is how I try to do it, and I also position it in a place that you can go through these things and maintain a life, essentially, and because they believe as students that something bad happens, like someone breaks up with them, and you can't tolerate it and deal with it, and they have negative bad thoughts. So I approach it from that place, and then I've had students reach out and say, hey, we'd like to get you back in our school. I was a 7th grader at the time. They're a senior now, or whatever the case. And I just spoke with one recently, and I asked him, I said, he's a senior now, and I said, what's the COVID thing going on in your school, and how are they handling it, and things like that. And he said, I'm really thankful for the superintendent that we have. He looks at it from a rational approach. He said, there's no masks, there's no quarantine unless you have tested positive for COVID, and just that one person is quarantined and all these things. And it's worked, he said. They haven't had outbreaks or anything like that. It's incredible.
Is this a local school?
This is a local school. It's a small school, or a small community. So it's
You're not going to say who it is.
I'm not going to say who it is, no. But I see these things, so these social media posts from these students and things all over the place that they're saying that, hey, you're not asking us.
Right.
You're not asking what this does to us. You're not asking us how we feel about this. And these students are saying, if they are asking, they're only promoting one thing, and that's the side of safetyism in these students that are scared. And I get it. Some people are scared.
Right. Who wouldn't be after 2 years of media, just complete insanity on that side of fear? That's been pushed down everybody's throat for the last 2 years. I completely understand people that are afraid.
So when you have a 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th grader who hasn't been able to process some of those emotions, you throw a pandemic at them, and you now put a mask on them, like you say, you can't see the smile and facial expressions and all those things. What do you think is going to happen?
Yeah, we're going to have mass depression.
Mass
depression.
Right. Yeah. So these articles come out and say there's these good things, but then the court comes out and says, okay, wait a minute, some of these things aren't very good. We can't do this. You can't keep, one of them is you can't keep charging students to be online and not in person because they expect to have these amenities and access to their professors and all these other things on the college level. And then you talk about some of these things and an increase in this business of 81% since the pandemic started because they have tools to help schools with online education.
Sure.
Let's follow the money.
Right, yeah.
81%?
It's huge.
Yeah.
One company.
Yep.
And so I look at these things because my grandkids will, be in school in a short couple of years. And I look at and think about these things, and it's like my 4 kids, each of them learned very differently.
Yep. Oh my.
You have 4.
We have 4, yep.
Do they all learn the same?
Absolutely not.
And guess what happens when you have a good teacher?
Oh, they break through, and that kid learns.
They adjust to each student.
Absolutely.
Yes, right? I know they did with my kids.
Yeah, they did with me. I mean,
right. Many times in my life, it's like, well, what's this week gonna, bring, right? And that's the whole idea and the point. And now all of a sudden, they're going to try to jam all these kids into one method, one way at home. They're
on their own.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Parents can't be home. I don't mean to dominate this conversation, but the thing, I'm heavily not invested, but vested in this because I believe that I went through the things I went to reach students. And guess what I can't do?
Right.
I can't reach students.
Right.
So this hits really, really, really hard for me. would have been around 15 or 16,000 students that I would have in the spring, excuse me, the spring of 2020 that I was contracted to go to schools for. There would have been that many students that I didn't get to speak to that I knew I was going to go speak with, right? Not only that, obviously they canceled the fall. They canceled pretty much all of 2021.
Right.
And I'll be completely honest, I'm not going to bend the knee and do certain things that these mandates have brought up. And so I'm like, I'm here for the student. I'm not here for the government. And so I'm not going to bend the knee to that.
Yeah.
So I'm vested in this heavy.
And I don't think it's just the government. I think, and I understand the idea of, the kids aren't the ones that are typically going to suffer if they get the Rona. It's the teachers. And I think a lot of this pushes from the teachers union, justifiable that they want to protect the teachers, but are teachers really,
So here,
not that I'm looking for the death rates of teachers, but
Right.
the teachers can wear protective gear. I mean, my wife's in the medical field, and they're tip to toes in medical stuff. Not saying that teachers need to come in full surgical gear, but there's ways for the teachers to protect themselves. But what's the damage happening to those kids? And I hate to say it, but God, it's your job. And there's a lot of teachers walking because, and I don't think, talking with some mutual friends of ours, they're not walking because they're scared of the COVID. They're walking because of all the BS that they're being pushed through.
yeah.
They're sick of the agenda, and they're literally walking out the doors of the schools because they're tired. And they just can't handle the distance learning. And these are brand new teachers, like in the business 2 or 3 years, and they said, if it's going to be like this, I don't want to be a teacher.
Yeah.
They just want to teach their kids. They want to teach their students, and they aren't being allowed to do that. I've got our daughters in pre-K, so it's a little bit different, but we've got a lot of friends that have kids in junior high and elementary school, and the distance learning is just absolutely destroying those families. And schools aren't daycare by any means, but you're asking a parent to teach 2 or 3 kids and work at the same time. It's not possible.
As humans too,
effective.
we're not drones, right?
No.
And so they're trying to put this system in place and say, "Oh, this is really good," but it turns people in, or they're trying to, in my view, turn them into a single-purpose, single-minded drone, right? You can't explore these different things and ways of learning.
It's a way to bring compliance, to make sure that people are compliant. That's been a big tool of this. The other thing is that Minnesota also has one of the widest achievement gaps in the country. When you look at school-age children, where they're achieving, and then you look at their economic situation, top to bottom in Minnesota, we have an exceptionally wide achievement gap. And these protocols, these measures are going to make that problem even worse because we're seeing these distance learning and all of that other associated response to COVID is very embedded in the inner cities, which is where the biggest achievement gap is. So what's it going to do to those areas, or what's it going to do to those people? It's going to make them fall behind even farther. Yep. And those are the areas that we've been trying to bring up.
Right.
And now we're just
Through education.
Right, through education, through educational spending. I mean, you look at how much is spent on an inner city school student versus someone in outstate Minnesota. It's not even close. I mean, they get all kinds of money up there, and now they're pushing them to distance learning. How does that even? It doesn't work. It's not going to work.
When a single parent is probably working 2 jobs just to keep food on the table, so the parent's not home to be able to.
Right.
Keep the children focused on what they're supposed to be doing. It's just a snowball effect, and it's a big downhill snowball effect.
It's interesting. I just, as you were talking, the two of you, and I thought of some of the things. I've gone into inner city schools. I've gone to rural schools, all of them. And it's each principal, when you go into the school, they give you a little some would say pep talk. I would say prep talk.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah.
So they're like, hey, this is how our students are. You know, some of these prep talks are very negative. Like, hey, our students are rough and tough and they're very disrespectful and all these different things. And, you know, we wouldn't feel bad if you know, just said, hey, I can't do this and, you know, bail and all kinds of stuff. As you're involved in doing it. And I said, and I went to one school and there was 3,000 students and in this huge auditorium and or their theater, whatever they call it, right? And so I go in and it's like 10 minutes countdown and he's giving me all this stuff and he's like, this is going to be terrible. There's all these students and, you know, blah, 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 blah. And I said, well, good thing I'm here for the students then and not for, you know, myself.
Yep.
And so I'm going to do what I can to reach the students. And so I will adjust as I need to. There was not one disrespectful student in that particular 3,000 plus students.
Yeah.
Everyone was quiet the whole time and listening. And there was times that we were cheering and laughing and having fun. And there were times that were very emotional and down. And the whole time they were responding to what I was trying to talk to them and reach with them, right? Together. I do it together. Mm-hmm. And the thing that the principal came back and said was, he said, I need to apologize to you because I saw these students in a completely different light as a student. Instead of what I needed to do and get them to do, I needed to figure out what they needed.
Right.
Right? And that's the thing here with this whole pandemic and education. They're not reaching students. They're saying, we're going to do it this way. Yep. We're going to make you comply. We don't care if you don't have an iPad or a computer at home or your internet sucks.
Right.
You're going to do it anyway.
Figure it out.
And you're going to get left behind. And that for me is just you go in there for the student.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And the silver lining here, because, you know, we have to look at silver linings right now, because in the world we're living in today, if you're not finding a silver lining somewhere, it's going to be rough.
There's
right?
a lot of them, though.
And there is. And one of the big ones is that when all these kids went to distance learning, they went into the home, and all of a sudden parents started to realize what their kids were being taught, and they don't agree with it. And now we're getting that pushback on the curriculum, which is necessary. It's long overdue, and it's high time that we have a real discussion on what's in this curriculum. So that's a big silver lining. But early on, it was so clear. I mean, even before COVID even got to America, we knew who it affected. We knew it was the elderly and the people who were, you know, immunocompromised or had other health issues. We knew that. We also knew that it didn't really affect the children as nearly as much, and we knew that the children didn't transmit it nearly as much. So the schools really were the safest place for those kids to be. Mm-hmm. Truly were the safest place for those kids to be, and what did we do? We pushed them out. Instead, we put people that were COVID positive into nursing homes. I mean, we did a completely upside down approach to this.
And you're absolutely right. They knew by the time it got here. They knew what this did to elderly people, and they knew how it affected kids. That's the really sick part to me.
Right.
They knew.
Right.
One other silver lining, because I don't want to just bash on teachers, but I think parents will have a completely new appreciation for the teachers that are teaching their kids and watching their kids every day.
Yep.
For sure.
Because parents are just like, how do you handle this?
Right.
We have 3 kids at home, and I'm pulling my hair out, and you have 25 or 30 kids in one classroom. How do you do it? So there's a lot of silver linings, and we need to point that out. And I don't want to blame the teachers for what's happening. It's well above them.
You mentioned
absolutely.
it is, and you mentioned teacher unions, and the thing that's very interesting for me traveling to all these schools has been like each school, even within a city, is very different.
Oh, absolutely.
Mm-hmm. And so these teacher unions are coming in. There's the federal teachers union, there's state teachers unions, and they're coming in, hey, rural Minnesota, you're going to do it this way.
Yeah.
And it is that to me is like, I mean, whether they need a union or not, don't need a union, I'm not saying that. But what I'm saying is you can never come in to an area, even in the same city, and say that this whole city and every school in it is going to operate the same way, and you're going to have the same level of success.
It's
Interestingly,
not a one size fits all.
It's not. And interesting, everything ties back to that. And that's where I kind of go back to the 10th Amendment. Okay. If this isn't in the Constitution, the federal government has zero to do with it. Zero. But we've sold our freedom to the federal government by saying, well, we're going to take your funding dollars for our schools, because if we don't get them, somehow we can't afford our schools, even though that money already came from us. So, let's look at what's causing this. It is a federal government problem. I mean, it's out of their purview. They shouldn't be involved in education really at all.
Right.
I mean, it should be at most a state level, and I believe it should even be more local than that. It should be, your curriculum should be decided at the local level more even than at the state level, in my mind. But, we've decided as a state that we want to have, a statewide standard, which, you can argue about that, but it certainly should not be at the federal level.
Right. The state level makes sense because the state wants to have a certain level of success, right? I mean, that makes sense. However, I don't think that, to me, what I've seen, it looks like you have to teach the same way. You have to, you know what I mean? So the outcome can be the same and the test scores can be the same or similar, the goals, right?
Right.
You understand what I'm saying? But the method, it should be very different.
Absolutely.
Like I messaged one of the teachers that I had, a couple years ago when I was in school.
Yep.
And I am so appreciative of the way she handled myself versus handling other people. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's like I needed what she was able to give.
She must have been a saint.
Was it a lot of tape?
She was a saint.
Or was
It was.
I mean, that was in the days of Velcro.
I don't
so
want
maybe
anybody going to jail, Mike. No, but and that's a good point though, because while a good teacher will look at each student and say, okay, I need to use a little bit more duct tape on this one than that one, right?
right.
But that's what they've taken away in my view, and they're taking away more and more with this pandemic, and so it's becoming that it is a us versus them kind of thing, and I'm very much against tribal things,
right?
And I'll fight tooth and nail because each of my kids were individuals, very different. Yep. Different jobs, all of them successful. In what success is to each person should be decided by that person.
Oh, absolutely.
And that's the whole point of it, is that each district and each state this is all being taken away from them, which means what? Each student.
Right.
It's being taken away from each student.
Yeah.
And then is it education?
Well, this is the single greatest promoter of school choice.
Absolutely.
I mean, school choice, if you were ever questioning whether school choice was a legitimate thing or whether it was necessary, it's so apparent right now that it's necessary, because it gives parents the opportunity to be mobile with their kid and say, okay, I don't agree with what this school's doing.
Yeah.
Let's go over here.
Yep.
And you can see that in the mass exodus from our local big city school system.
Yeah.
800 students a year have left Rochester Public Schools for the last 2 years in a town that's growing as fast as Rochester.
But as I talked about in a different episode, they'll frame it a different way.
Yeah.
When the small towns outside of Rochester have had to close open enrollment because they have run out of room, or they're doing huge additions to absorb all these students from in Rochester, that screams issues.
Yes.
Yep.
And look at the fiasco of our Rochester School Board. They're pushing that agenda. They're lockstep.
Yep, absolutely.
Maybe that's why. Just a hunch.
Anything?
That's all.
Thanks for being here, Craig.
Thanks for
Mike,
having
thanks
me.
for being here.
Yeah, thank you.
Any last words? Oh, wait, did I say that right? Thanks for hanging out with us today. We do appreciate you hammering the like button, hammering the share button. Tell all your friends about us. Make sure you also take us out of context because we really like it when you do that. See you next time.
Hey everybody, thanks for listening to this conversation that I just had. I was very honored to be a part of it, honored to be the host of This Matters in Real Life. I think it's extremely important to cover a lot of different things and topics and get people's opinions. When my daughter died in the car crash 10 years ago, I said that's what I would do. I would look at the answers, I would look at the truth, and I would make sure that they would intersect. They would not divorce each other. It's so often that we want answers that are not the truth. We want answers that are comfortable. We want answers that make us feel good. Well, there's a lot of things in life that it's not the case. So who am I? Well, I am you. I'm no different than you are. I eat and sleep and, all the different things. Same thing that you do. I hurt. I feel joy. I've had a lot of experience, probably just like you. I work hard, probably just like you. One of the things that you can do to support us is go to shinybrandmerch.com, where you'll see things like the sweatshirt that I have on. I work. I'm a full-time, a truck driver. What do I deliver? I deliver trucks. It's a little bit different of a gig than a normal truck driver, yes, but I am what would be considered a commercial vehicle transport specialist. So about 5 to 6 days a week, I deliver trucks. I get into a truck, I go 2,000 miles, I deliver it to its new owner, I get on an airplane and I go find another one. Nothing real glamorous unless you make it that way. And I've decided that I would have a lot of conversations along the way, and some of those conversations I'll be able to share with you. Again, hey, thanks for your support. Appreciate you. We'll see you next time.